It's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to Kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Gilbert, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Whammers. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Whoa, Christmas music on the bumper.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be back. I've been gone for a bit doing family stuff back in the great state of Iowa. So I haven't been around and didn't know anything about the Christmas music bumper. But glad to be with you all again. And Merry Christmas, everybody.
Ho, ho, ho.
Oh, ho, ho. If you don't know who I am, which by now everybody watching should probably know, but I'm Barb Kjellberg. I am the CFO of Silverline Comics. I'm also the creator of Divinity and the inker on Cat and Mouse and many other things, and have been in the business for over 35 years now.
Yeah.
Rob, your turn.
I've been in the business about 37 years, I think, is what I counted the other day. And I'm normally a pencil artist, but I sometimes ink my own work. And I worked on the Star Trek books back in the 1990s, and recently started working with Silverline. Did a book called Twilight Grim, and along with a project that Barb and I will be working on sometime this year. I got the script, by the way. I got the first script.
Oh, did you really?
For this, yeah, I've got the first script for this.
Oh, send it to me.
Our secret project that we're going to be doing.
Send it to me. I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. I think I've still got the email, and I'll just forward it to you with that in it. If not, I will send you a copy of it. But yes, so we're going to be on a project together later on this year, and I did a little work on the Christmas story for Divinity, Barb's book, which was a lot of fun. She the first time she'd ever inked my work, and I was pleased as punch. Beautiful stuff. So anyway, David, give us your bona fides.
Hi, I'm Dave Rios. I'm typically on the Tuesday night stream, but I'm hanging out with this fun bunch tonight. Got a lot of, it's a hanging out on the Tuesday stream. I know that Jose Fuentes has been, he's had some things recently, so we've been spending a lot of time without him on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I've been tuning in to see, and I noticed he hasn't been there for a while.
And so I've been, the sole artist on the with the writers going on. So it's kind of fun to be back in all art,
artist land.
Artist land here. And I've likewise have been tuning in and paying attention to the Wednesday Wham stuff.
Thanks.
Even though I'm not, I haven't been on, but and I could say we've missed you. I've missed you, Barb. So glad to have you back.
Yeah,
as well.
We all did.
As far as the history stuff, I also, along with both of you, came from the Malibu end of it. I used to do the Ultraverse books, some of the actual Malibu, like I did a few pages here and there coloring on some of the Star Trek stuff. And the Marvel stuff at the time. I took a huge break. My primary job kind of took over for a long time, and
Same here.
I'm back doing
all of us. Yeah, all three of us. Yes.
Some stuff with Silverline. I'm working on the coloring of the Demon Tales book, and I'm also going to be doing some. I have another project behind it as well that I'm got lined up after that. And I did have the pleasure of doing a couple of covers for the Kalis, including the one that Rob did. So I did some.
That turned out really nice, by the way. I liked it. I liked how that turned out.
I liked it. I also like the fact that that's the cover that got chosen to be the foil cover.
Yay!
So good job.
Speaking of covers, I have lined up. In a couple of weeks, we'll be doing another cover review, similar to what we did, where we'll be looking at more recent Silverline covers and critiquing them, saying what we like, we don't like, what could have been done better. We'll be doing that in a couple of weeks.
Both liked that particular episode, and it was fun one to do. There's a lot of interesting stuff to look at, so it should be fun to see what comes up with this batch that you've got for the next one.
And also, for those who have not heard yet, we are now at Diamond Distributors and in the preview magazine. So, yay! It's the big time.
We made it. We're somebody now.
Yeah, there's a nice 2-page spread in the previews. I think it's page 8 and 9 or something.
Yeah, which
there.
I have not seen because I order online, and it doesn't actually show the previews. It just shows it has digital little. But
it's a nice
put a check
article
mark next to order it. Yeah, that's great. I love
and this
that.
is something that we have been working for since the beginning. And we've been Silverline's been around for what, 4 or 5 years now, something like that.
Boy, it's pretty close to that. I didn't come in in the earliest stages, but
I was from
you've been
the
going
beginning.
a year or so when I jumped in, dragged kicking and screaming. Not really.
And we knew it was going to be. We knew it was going to be a long process to climb that rope, and a little bit at a time. But this was our ultimate goal, was to get into shops. That doesn't mean that we're going to abandon the Kickstarters or by any means, but we wanted to broaden our base, so to speak, so that it's also in the shops. And finally, we have accomplished that, and it's a really good feeling. Really good feeling.
Yeah.
Been a lot of hard work behind it.
It's a thrill. I've been self-publishing for a couple of almost 2 decades now, here and there a book. So it's nice to actually be affiliated with something that's actually going to be in previews that goes to every shop, and it won't be something I'll sell at a convention table. I will sell it at the convention table, but it'll also be in every shop that wants to order one. So that's great.
Yep, still going to be selling at my convention table. I still have a lot of people, believe it or not, who seek me out at shows specifically to see what new stuff I've put out. So, we enjoy talking. So that personal touch is not going to go away.
Yep.
Well, I can tell you that just recently I've been I've been going through and rereading a lot of the Ultraverse stuff. So I've been Barb, I've been reading some of the solitaire books and all that stuff. So it's like, hey, here you go. Here's Barb's
Did every issue of Solitaire. Did a little bit dabbled on almost every single book that Malibu did, but I was mainly the Solitaire inker. Love that book over Jeff Johnson. God, he is so good. He's such a fun, and he was so nice to throw me a bone and do my favorite cover for Divinity, which is the pink cover, the infamous pink cover. He did that for me.
The pink's the color this year. Barbie.
Yeah, well, it stands out. When I do shows, and I take notice of which color covers sell better than others, and it sells probably 2 to 1 better than any of the other issue number 2 covers. So, that says something.
It is what it is, and it's hard to predict.
No, absolutely,
almost impossible. Yeah.
Maybe when it rolls around and Divinity gets offered at Diamond, maybe you can push for that cover since it's pretty fan favorite cover.
It is a fan favorite. Well, tonight we are going to talk about motivation. And we've talked on these podcasts before about inspiration. Now, that's a completely different animal than motivation. We've been inspired by this artist or that artist or this kind of style or this kind of, feel in your artwork and stuff like that is not the same thing as motivation. Motivation is what makes you get up every day and do this. Why put ourselves through this torture every single day?
It can be, yeah.
And I mean, because there's a reward to doing this, whether it's extrinsic, which is an external reward, fame, fortune.
We're in the wrong industry for that.
Yeah. That's an extrinsic. Intrinsic comes from within, self-satisfying for yourself. The runner who gets up at 5 a.m. every morning and runs for nobody but themselves. That's intrinsic motivation. And there's all kinds of different reasons why somebody would pursue art, because let's face it, it can be a hard and thankless career in a lot of aspects. Why would you actually put yourself through this? Out there pimping yourself out at every con, hi, Pressing the Flesh, my Barb Gilbert, here's my portfolio. It's torture, because you're basically selling yourself, and if anybody, it's a hard road to hoe. So I'm going to ask Rob why he did this to himself.
Because I have to. The only really good answer I can give you is that when I try to do anything else, it's so dissatisfying that it's depressing. But when I sit down and draw or paint or do something creative, it helps my soul soars. I feel better, and it's when I worked a full-time job. I'm retired now, but when I worked a full-time job, people would ask me about that. Wouldn't you rather be doing your art? And I'm going, yeah, but the thing is, I have to do a real job to feed. I feed the mortgage. I feed my family. I'm taking care of all that. I feed that with the regular job. I feed my soul with the artwork that I do. So and I know some writers that are also this way too. It's the only thing this is how I feel. I'm a writer. That's all I do. Anything else I do is just to to feed the creator in me. So that's where my motivation comes from.
But why
Is
comics?
Why? Well, that's inspirational. That's the inspirational part. I could have done. I actually went to college to be a commercial artist, as they called it then. It's called graphic design now, where you would design packages and logos and things like that. And I went to school for that, but and I actually thought about being a painter as well. But something about comics just really reached in and grabbed me. After I saw that Jack Kirby comic book, Avengers #2, I went, that's what I want to do. It just grabbed me. It's because there's more to it than just making an image. You're telling a story sequentially. It's more than just a piece of art. It's actually it's a piece of art, and it's telling you a story. It can touch it. Any piece of art can touch you and make you cry, make you laugh, make you sad. But you get involved in it because you're into the story. So I think that's the storytelling is what pulled me into doing comics. So
it's feeds your. I love that, by the way.
It
feeds your soul,
because that's what it is. I am feeding my soul. I'm feeding my soul. Now that I'm doing this, I'm a much happier and much nicer person now that I'm doing this sort of thing pretty much full time. So,
yeah, back to it. Yeah, and I've said this many times, but once you are bitten by the bug, once you get into comics, it's like the herpes virus. It never leaves your body. It never goes away.
That's horrible. That's horrible, Barb. Oh my gosh.
Well, it is. It dwells in your body forever.
It's true.
I think I'm going to set this down and walk away. Thank you.
You're not wrong, but boy, that's a weird analogy. Thanks for that. Thanks for that middle picture.
Brainworm.
But no, you're right. It is. It's infectious.
It is.
It's an incurable infection. Yeah.
It is.
Wow.
It never goes away. I mean, once you've got that taste, it's an addiction.
Well, yeah, and how did you, when you first got the first book that got published, and you got copies of it,
and you're gone.
What was that like? What was opening up that box and grabbing that first one, opening it up, and seeing your name in the credits?
Yep, that was an extrinsic motivation.
Wow, and I to this day I still get boxes of comics. I still open it up. I go, wow, there's my name again. I've done it again.
Yep.
So it's not as the first time. It's like your first lover. You never forget that, but you don't stop loving. So, but yeah,
it's a rush every time.
It is. Just nothing else like it. So, David,
I don't know if I can follow that. Rob's really hit the nail. So, kind of.
Part of me is a philosopher. I've always loved philosophy and philosophers. So that I think that way. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, for me, how I ended up getting into the art aspect of it, it's always doing art and stuff when I was a kid. You're always drawing things, playing around. But when I went into college, I was originally going to be a mechanical engineer. And I was studying that. And I started going through classes and things with, sorry, this is kind of the inspiration, but I started to question, do I really care about what the ionic bonds and materials and stuff like that, and I had to kind of just turn back around and go, what do I love doing? What part of mechanical engineering do I love doing? And I'm like, well, it's basically I like drawing the stuff out.
The
you know,
drafting.
The
the
drafting,
drafting,
part, yeah.
you know, and the artwork part of it. So I came to that realization. Hopefully, I could have come to it earlier, but
Yeah.
midway through my year at my community college, I switched to commercial art, as you mentioned. That was also at the time
Yeah.
when I was doing it was when they made the switch from commercial art to graphic design. So
Yeah,
I know
it happened
exactly
just
what you're
shortly
talking
after.
about.
Yeah. I remember when that happened too.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after I was no longer in college, so that kind of switched over. But yeah, it was commercial art, which that also included illustration and other things like that. But it was mostly package design and logo making, that sort of thing, which is that's very rewarding as well. I do some of that to this day on the publishing stuff that I do.
Yeah, and you learn that, things like the difference between points and picas, and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
and then you're like, okay, I'm just okay. I'm going in and I'm learning a lot of this stuff, and then also kind of on an inspirational side of it is, I knew a lot with the comics and stuff, but I hadn't really been into it. And the big thing that brought me in was Robotech. I love the anime, I love the comics and all that stuff. And when a friend of the family went to a local comic store and came back with this, and I opened it up, I'm like, oh, wow. So that was
Bug.
what
The
initially
bug.
brought
The
that bug
bit
in
you.
in
It
for me.
sparked a fire.
It did. I love the stuff.
Remember.
I started, expanding out. At the time, a lot of big things. I was a fan of a lot of the comics from Kumiko and stuff at the time.
Yeah.
So the mages, the elementals, the stuff like that. In addition to all the Robotech stuff, and I just got lost and fascinated with all the different worlds and the different ways of doing things. And then when that kind of drove me into wanting to be involved with comics and working in the comic shops and all that stuff. And then when when Malibu did their kind of their program with the different local comic shops, that introduced me basically to Mike Giles and the coloring team at Malibu. And man, when it was time to go, I was trying to find anything I could to try and color, and I'm there, and I found like the black and white issue to the Max. It was like a darker image or whatever, and I'm scanning in the things, and I'm trying to learn on my own with the computer coloring to do all this stuff because I had the drive, send it in, and just continually,
And see, that's a core component of motivation is you have to be driven.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to take you over in order to, especially when you're talking about an art, any art career, music, composing, painting, comic books, and filmmaking, any of that. You have to be driven in order to make it.
Driven almost to the point of obsession.
Yeah, it's that far from that line of obsession. Some people cross over that line, but yeah, you have to be pretty much obsessed and work at it constantly.
I did. I was constantly, practicing. I was, constantly, either calling or emailing or whatever with Mike Giles. And eventually, I actually had gone. Malibu had stopped. They had their colorist that they needed at the time, so there was kind of hiatus. I went off and moved to Texas for about 6 months just to try something new, but was continually going through. And then once Mike Giles said, oh, we're going to be opening for positions again soon, it was like, nope, I want to be back. Move back to California and keep that going. And eventually, I got a call from Mike, and he said, "You have literally called me every day every single day. I'm going to have to give you a job.
Yeah.
There you go.
That started it.
Persistence. Yeah, it's just this dogged determination.
Well, there's this deep desire in you that you've got to do this, and it drives you. It's the motivation. It is the motivation.
Mhm.
It's in here that drives you to do that stuff. Makes you obsessive about it. Yep.
So yeah, and I started, I tried to pick up everything I could and learn from everybody. The one disadvantage that Malibu had is you're getting your name out there and printed on the stuff was hard. Typically all the coloring were whatever group you were in, Food Hammer, any of those particular groups. You would see that, but it was rare to get your name. There's a few places that my name were in there, but there was a lot of opportunities. But like you said, when you get your book and all this stuff that you worked on, you go and you find your pages and stuff. And I was at the time, I was a huge X-Men fan. So when I got my copy of X-Men 339, where I colored the cover of that, is like, wow, how many copies can I get that so that I can hand them out to people and all that?
Yeah.
So I know what you mean there. So
Merry Christmas, Pops.
Hi, Pops.
Hey, Pops.
So
but yeah, you got it.
I came at it at a different angle than you two, but ended up in the same place. All my growing up years, I was like, I'm going to be a nurse. When I was a little girl. Okay, I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to be a nurse. And I just went with it, just because I'd always said I was going to be a nurse. So I ended up going to medical assistant. I went to college to become a medical assistant, and got through that. And as I was doing my rotation or the intern at a hospital, my last semester, and I realized I can't do this. I hate this. Why did I do this? This is not for me at all. You have to be a certain kind of person to be able to deal with patients, and it wasn't in me. I didn't have the patience for patients. Let's put it that way. So I graduated with a 4.0, got my license basically, but I didn't take the test to register with the state. I immediately, the week after I graduated from that, I started at Iowa State for advertising design.
Which is commercial art. It's commercial art, graphic design. Yeah.
I had gotten straight A's all through high school in art, loved art. And it just never occurred to me that I could do it for a living, And somewhere along the line in getting my medical assistant degree, I'm like, well, what do I like doing? Well, I like doing art, I liked it. It wasn't a passion or a love, but I really liked it. It was a lot more fun than drawing blood from a 400-pound woman.
Finding that vein.
Oh my God. Yes. So I went to college, and then I ended up getting married and having kids. And I was a stay-at-home mom. And I mean, why am I even saying this? If you've ever been a stay-at-home mom, you guys haven't been a stay-at-home mom.
I've been a Mr. Mom. I have.
Mom.
I was a Mr. Mom for a while.
Mind numbing.
Can be, yeah. If you don't have something to occupy your mind, yeah.
Yes, it is mind numbing. It is. You've got a 2 and a 4-year-old, and it's just all day long. You're losing brain cells. They're dribbling out your ears at an alarming rate. It was horrible. Benjamin says, as a blood, sweat, and tears independent comic writer, I've had highs and low lows, high highs and low lows. I'm in a low low now. Seeing artists I've worked with, some of the first ones to hire.
Hire them. Got another message?
Some of the first to hire them. Benjamin says, I'm happy to watch their success going on bigger and better publishers.
Bigger jobs,
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I enjoyed doing a lot was painting. I liked acrylics. I would do that to save my sanity. The thing is, I was a better forger than I was an actual painter. I could forge like nobody's business, but coming up with original stuff of my own was a little iffy. Obviously, there's not a lot of legal money to be made in forging. So,
well, copying. Let's make it nicer. You copied. So yeah.
But it was actually a forgery that got me into comics.
Is that right?
It was. I couldn't make any money off of my forgeries. I was somewhere along the line, I got obsessed with ElfQuest, and I would take some of her panels and recreate them on canvas.
Wow.
Canvas. Yeah. And one of my girlfriends I would give them away because I couldn't sell them. That's copyright, but you could give them away. And one of my girlfriends took one of my forged paintings to Wendy and Richard and showed it to them. And they hired me to do a great big 3x3 canvas for their convention backdrop. Yeah.
Because I did not know this part of your story, Barb. That's great.
I'm that good of a forger. So once, and like I said, I was a bored housewife, and I didn't want to just sit at a desk and do commercial art. I wanted something that was out of the box. That's the kind of person I am. I want to be. I'm out there.
Yeah,
on
I see
the
that
edge.
in you. Yeah.
Yeah, I like being out of the box and just being a little bit weird. And during the course of doing this painting, I'm going, comics. That's my weirdness. I think that is fascinating. I was already reading ElfQuest obsessively. So I decided to try to do inking. And I went out to San Diego. Still not bitten by the bug yet. I'm more curious than anything else. But during my visit to San Diego Comic-Con, I really was inspired to really go for it. And that little ember started to grow in me. It was a hot enough ember that I came home and I practiced every single day for a solid year.
Yep.
And see, that's the kind of dedication that you have to do on your own. That's not inspiration. That's motivation, because you're not getting any reward for this. Yeah. You're sitting down at a drawing board every single day and practicing your art. And nobody's clapping for you. Nobody's paying you. You're not getting any recognition for it. You're just sitting there and churning it out. But it pays off. You have to be that kind of driven. And then the next year I went out and I got a job with Malibu. And you're right. Once you see your name for the first time in a book, then it goes from extrinsic to intrinsic, where you're getting a reward for your art. You're getting recognition. You're getting a niche kind of fame. And I mean, let's face it, in the 90s, I was getting paid very, very well. I was making good money at it. And it just grabs you, like it hooks into you, and you just cannot get away from it. Even when things fell apart in the 2000s and went back to, doing a muggle job and did this on the side, it never went away. Yeah. It's in you for life. And you just feel, I've always told people when I was doing accounting for 20 years, accounting was my job. Comics is my career, because that's what I feel about it. Comics or accounting paid the bills. It was my job so that I could have a career in comics.
That fed your family. Yep.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it started out as a way to bring some real pizzazz into my boring housewife, stay-at-home mother life, and turned into this huge flame, like just kind of took over my life.
But that's what in order to succeed at this, that's what has to happen. I've known other artists who have huge amounts of talent, but they don't have the motivation. They don't have the drive to get it done. That's that last final step. You can work on your craft, but you've got to have that final spark that you're not going to rest until you get it done.
Yeah.
It's nothing else. You can't let anything stand in your way. You will get there. It's just a matter. You have to push everything else out of the way. So it's the motivation. And like I said, I've seen other artists that are extremely talented that just didn't make it because they didn't have that final little tiny spark that puts you over the edge and then
give up
and puts you in. Yeah, they give up. Yep.
Hugo says it's not forging, it's artistic reinterpretation. Thank you, Hugo. I love that. I'm still a pretty damn good forger, by the way. Now, Benjamin brings up a really good point. He says he feels that's the way he feels about his art, forging. That's called imposter syndrome.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Now, I suffer from imposter syndrome hugely. Even though I've been doing this for over 35 years, I know any day now somebody's going to catch me out as a fake.
The balloon of fakeness that you've been blowing up is somebody's going to come along and stick it with a pin and pop it for you. Yeah, I've fortunately gotten past that. I am what I am, but there's always I think that's also the basis for the fear of success. Some people are afraid. That's another motivation killer, is the fear of success. It's been the journey for you to get there, and you're afraid that once you get there, you're going to be found out as an imposter. So you don't want to get to that point. You stop before you actually make that last step into success. So,
really? That's interesting.
I've known people like that as well. That they've made that march. They spent the time. They got obsessed, and then something just stops them. And the only thing that makes any sense to me about that is they have a fear of success. They're afraid that the journey is going to be over. The journey they've been on all this time that they've been enjoying is going to be over once they get the success. So they don't want that to end. They just keep doing it for themselves only. They don't care if it means success anywhere else. No fame, no fortune, no none of that. It's just they get the reward of just doing it. So I don't know.
What about you, David? Have you ever suffered from imposter syndrome?
Not per se.
You've always known you're good at what you do.
No, I guess if you put it that way. No, I've never known. I've always been hypercritical of what I do. It's never good enough for me. It's part of the thing. Like, I'm not one of these really quick, fast people that can throw it out there, because I'm always going, and can I add a little more? Can I add a little bit more? Because, I think does it ever really come to the point where I feel it's good enough? It's good for me. Sometimes it's just, I got to call it. It's like, I can't do anymore.
That's the trick. And that's the trick of becoming an artist, especially in the comics world, is knowing when to stop, because you can noodle it to death. You can, really, you can, you can just work on it, oh, okay, this line, oh, I'm going to move this line just a little bit this way. And you can work on it until it just,
It's one
there's a
reason I don't
point at which you
pencil.
go, it's good enough. It's
Yeah.
good enough. I'm toward the point I can allow that to come off my table, go out and I can go on to the next piece.
Yeah,
That means that,
I never became a penciler because nothing would ever get done. It was so much easier for me to ink and color than it was to pencil. It's just, and that's another thing is that the imposter syndrome thing won't allow me to do sketches at cons. I've never, I'll take some commissions home and do them at home and send them, but I can't sketch at cons.
oh, wow.
It weirds me out. Can't do it. I freeze.
You can't do it with an audience.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Nope.
Yeah, whereas I'm just the opposite. I'm just fine. People are always asking me, how do you do it with all this noise and everything going on around you and people coming up to talk to you? And I've been doing it for 20, 30 years now. And I've just kind of gotten used to it. I sit down at the table and that's what I do. I draw at conventions. Now, I used to do early on in the 80s and 90s, I did a lot of it. Back in those days, man, I was cranking them out. These days, I get a handful a day, maybe, so there's not as much pressure involved. But yeah, I've never had a problem with that. That's interesting.
Yep. My art is a very private thing. I do it in my privacy of my studio.
Yeah, there's nobody looking over your shoulder. It sounds like maybe it's part of that imposter syndrome.
Oh,
you're afraid
absolutely.
You're afraid they're going to catch you using your little tricks that you use to do what you do, which they're not tricks, they're techniques. You think they're tricks, but it's techniques that you're using. So yeah, but that sounds like that's what that is. And if you found a way to overcome that, so you're good. You do prints, don't you? You sell prints at your.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. So yeah, you get over it that way. I have prints that I sell too. But yeah, that's how you get past that.
Well,
that's great, Benjamin. I love doing writer bad sketches at cons.
I've got several of those in my collection of sketches.
But I see that with Rob in that. I mean, Rob's always, one of the things that I always see from all these streams and stuff is Rob's always, do it every day. Do it. So it's not surprising to me that, he hasn't taken that to heart. And for him, sorry, I'm speaking for you, but I just see you, okay, I'm set up. I'm ready for the table. Table set up. I'm ready. I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to do what I do every day and just start drawing. See what comes.
A lot of times I actually take pages or I do spot illustrations for the publishing books that I do, and I'll take some of those along. And part of it is too the salesman in me. In the fact that if you're sitting there drawing, that pulls people over to the table. And they're curious as to what you're doing, and they'll come and they'll watch for a while. So it's a performance to get them. I could and eventually talk to them about what they might want to me to draw for them, and it's a way to say, well, I could do something like this for you. What would you like me to do for you? And so there you go. But that's so it's sitting. Plus, it's what I do every day.
Now I can color in front of people. I can take my iPad and sit there and color it, and that's not the same as creating. That's handling something that's already created, and I'm just enhancing it.
Well, that's the
not to put not David.
That's the forger.
Oh, it's art. It's art, but it's not me having to put myself out there and have people looking over my shoulder going, "Why is that eye weird?" Isn't it? That's not what a finger looks like,
I've done that too. Like I said, I've done a couple of back stories in some comics for doing inking. So I do know what you mean. I've done some inking stuff as well.
Coloring's a lot harder than I thought it would be. I'm coloring Sirens right now. The last issue of Sirens. I'm like, I'm out of ideas. I can't keep using the same like colors on every single panel. I got to mix it up somehow. And I've only been coloring a short time, so I find it myself getting frustrated. So I have all the props to you guys that are good colorists. I look at you guys as colors. I'm like, why can't I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something maybe we can talk about at some point. Is especially because I haven't done much coloring of my own work, and my stuff is extremely simple. I usually go for just what would be called flats.
Yeah.
in most modern coloring artwork, my stuff looks more like flats than anything else.
Well, that's pretty much what I do at conventions. Is I'll sit there and do flats because that's
because they're
easiest.
They're kind of easy to knock out. And I use markers.
It's basically crayon coloring in. All right.
Yeah, and I use markers at the shows where I do the commissions. I use markers for that because they're quick and I can knock out a kind of a flat looking thing, and then you can blend it a little bit too. But
then you get into the shading and the special effects.
But I would like to.
Then I got to think about those. I got to be in my studio for those.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to colorists about, do you have a palette a palette of colors that you use? Do you have a set palette for nighttime or for daytime or that sort of thing, or do you just are you just going in there fly by seat of your pants type of thing, or what techniques do you have? It would be interesting to talk to colorists about that. So
we're going to have David come back.
Yeah, well, have you come back and see if we can talk to some other colorists and talk about that sort of thing, because that would be fascinating for me to hear what you had to say about that.
Well, I'm always taking every opportunity I can to learn different styles, different techniques. One of the things that I kind of switched, I've always been a mid-tone base and then highlight and shadow
build out from that, darken and lighten.
But I've seen a lot of impressive things that start from starting with darks and going lighter. And actually on the cover that I did for yours, I actually switched up the technique, and I did that where I laid down, if you look at my flats were all extremely dark, and the image was at nighttime.
Yeah, it was a nighttime scene. Yeah.
So from there was, I incorporated some blues to kind of, tone in a darker feeling and all that stuff. And, I had some concern from Roland. He's like, are you going too dark? And I'm working with Tommy to see, let's throw some numbers. I'm still trying to keep these numbers here, so the saturation level, I'm looking at all that stuff. And then one of the things that I had that was really difficult about those covers in particular is the other cover that I did was also almost very similar scene.
Yes. Yeah,
all three covers actually were out on the snow in that. It's just the A cover that was done by the regular artist on the book had sideways action pose, but
whereas mine was coming at you.
So between the two covers I had were two figures out on the snow at night fighting or getting ready to fight. So that for me kind of presented a little bit of a challenge. And my first draft of the other cover that Jackson Rennick did was very similar, and I thought it was just too similar, which is why I pitched a idea completely off. I'm like, well, one of the big popular things that they're doing right now is there's a lot of black, white, and red being pitched on things. You've got like Harley Quinn, black, white, and redder. Grendel's been doing a lot of the black, white, and red stuff. So I'm like, well, let me pitch this I'll take what I did and modify it and use gray tones and reds and things like that to give it this black, white, and red feel. So that's something that I did to kind of change up between the two covers because there was so many similarities. And, I had Roland say to me, he said, I really didn't look at this through when I said, pitch what you want. And then three pencilers came up with the same.
Well, looking through the story, that's the most action-oriented section of the story. So that he should have assigned us instead of just saying, do an interesting scene from the book, or do whatever you think is interesting. And we all found the same thing interesting. So
yeah.
Well, David, your whole speech about that really dovetails nicely into motivation, because another thing about motivation is you never stop experimenting, because you're always looking for that next little fix that's gonna, oh yeah, that's really cool. I like how this came out. I need to try some more of this. You're always looking to improve or change or learn something new. That is another thing about that's I can never say it, extrinsic motivation. It's satisfying internally. Oh, that's intrinsic.
Yeah.
It's internally satisfying for you're personally to learn these new techniques and new things, because it's fun for you. That's one of the reasons I picked up coloring. I don't know how many of you out there know how old I am, but in February I will be 65. Woohoo! Medicare, yeah.
So you're just a little younger than my wife. So,
yeah. And when I turned 60, I had been inking since I was 29, 28, something like that. And I'm like, is this all there is in me, is inking? I think I want to push the envelope. I had just retired. I retired at 60 from the Muggle world, and I had time to learn something new. And I said, I want to learn something new. I'd never done any digital art ever in my life. And I said, now's the time to learn digital art. So I got myself an iPad. I started digitally inking. And I'm like, well, I've got this iPad and I've got Procreate. Let's learn to color. And it was just, like I said, I'm still a baby colorist. I'm very basic colorist, but it has been fun. And every time I go out, every issue I do, I learn new things. I learn new techniques. I study other colorists. I'm like, how did they get that effect? That is really cool. I'm going to have to mess around and see if I can't reproduce that effect. And it's just a fascinating journey. So, I mean, you're never too old to reignite that fire, or stoke it higher.
So I have a question for both of you, because you're in two separate areas. The inking aspect, you're on this side of the thing, and Rob's on this side.
I get you.
So, having played around with color, and getting exposed to it, for both of you, has that come and influenced your standard work medium? So for Barb, has that gone and say, well, I may not have to rely as heavily on darker inked areas if maybe I can push this more with color? And Rob, for you, is it more of a case of, I know I'm not dealing with a lot of the black and white mediums, and now that I've played around with color, maybe I'm leaving more areas in my design for allowing color to accent that. So those are kind of my questions to both of you if it has, and if it hasn't, that's perfectly fine. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no is a perfectly good answer.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
In the fact that since I'm coloring my own work, I will do separate inks. So for instance, in issue number 2 of Divinity, the first page, you have the villain talking to a bunch of holograms. But you can see through these holograms, right? So if I laid all those inks down, it would be hard to separate the background lines from the hologram lines. So I inked it on 2 separate pages. I inked the holograms on one page and the rest of the page on another page. And then that way I could do color holds on the holograms, but yet still leave the background to come through. I would have never done that before. I would just ink the whole thing and let you figure it out.
Yeah, it used to be done with overlays with tracing paper. You would do that. You would you'd get a sheet or a section of tracing paper that would lay over the top of it. That would be for the color hold. But that's so much easier to do with digital now because you don't have to make sure it's aligned properly. First of all, it is aligned properly digitally. But
I ink it on
separate,
I ink those on a separate layer, and then I export just that layer and bring it back, drop the background and bring that back. And so I can do color holds for that. And you can still have the background as blacks and the foregrounds and everything like that, but you can have the middle ground, the holograms, on a completely separate layer that you can do color holds on. I would never think of that when I was just inking.
Yeah, and I, speaking of doing the layers and stuff, I did that on Rob's Kalis covers. I pulled out the comet that was coming down from the top,
right?
Because I knew that Roland wanted to make sure and have it go over the top of the logo.
Yes.
So
that was my intent when I drew it, is that it would go over the logo. It's actually not a comet. That's the main character.
The
catching
ship?
fire as it goes down. No, it's him.
Oh, him. Okay.
In an astronaut suit coming down through the atmosphere and burning up. His suit burns up, but he's invulnerable. So yeah.
So in that regard, yes, it has made a difference in the way I ink things, because I think ahead to the coloring aspect of it. I plan ahead. And in some instances, yes, I don't like to drop a lot of blacks. I like my blacks. I once in a while I will drop some blacks because I tell myself, I can fill this in better with a pattern color, a stipple or something, So, but that doesn't happen too often. More often than not, I will separate my blacks out on different layers in order to be able to work the colors better. But that's a completely new thing for me and exciting. Yes.
Yeah, it is. If I'm coloring my own work, it does affect it, because I can go, I want to do a specific effect in the colors here, so I'll leave that and I'll work on it in the colors. But I don't do a lot of my own coloring work, so I don't do it very often. My biggest the biggest problem I have with my art is I don't have enough blacks. I don't spot my blacks as well as what's in here doesn't make it onto the page. I somehow have not ever gotten to that point where I feel satisfied with the amount of black and where I place the black on the page. So I leave a lot. So my work is lighter in that respect already. It's already leaving plenty of room for the colorists to play with. So, but then if I've got an emotional scene that I want to make sure comes across where it needs a dark shadow or something to emphasize the emotion of the scene, then I will put a lot of color in or a lot of cross hatching in the background, so that the color is just forced to go in the direction that I want to go, because it's difficult to leave notes for the colorist on the sides of the pages that I use. I do it as close to the edges as I can possibly get. So, I don't always know who's going to color it in any case. So, but yeah, it's affected it when I'm doing the coloring, but probably not so much when I know someone else is going to be doing it.
That's the privilege of inking and coloring my own stuff, is that I can plan ahead. Whereas David, you get what you get, and you got to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have to make sure that I'm worth my grain of salt, that I shouldn't need Rob to go and write stuff in there. I should be able to look at the artwork and say,
and
this
I
is
should
where
be
the
able
shadows.
to give it to you in the scene as well. If you read the script and you see what I've drawn, you should be able to infer what to do with it now. And as a good colorist, you do, but I haven't always had the great fortune of having good colorists on my work from back in the 80s. I remember one Star Trek I did, and when it came back, I went, "Oh my God, he's ruined it." It flattened. The colors were horrible, and it just, any depth that was in the panels was gone. And this was, I won't even say where it was, which book it was, but it flattened everything. So occasionally I've had really bad, and I think it was because the company had changed printing, how they did their printing, and it whatever he did didn't really translate completely to the page. Everything was garish, and it just flattened everything. So,
yeah, you're dealing a lot with saturations. You're also dealing with, what's, these are 4 pages typically when they're printed. So, they have to balance out what's on all 4 pages, whether they lighten some or darken some. And so, and a lot of colorists do things like, I've seen a lot of them that relied heavily on the dodge and burn tool. And the problem with the burn tool is it added a lot of blacks. And when you start putting blacks in yellows and reds, it really muddies them out.
Muddies them up big time, yeah.
So, it's how, there's a lot of factors that go into that, particularly with the printed page at the end. So, yeah, there can be some challenges
I
there.
never use dodge and burn on coloring.
Neither have I.
Never,
mostly
ever.
because I don't know how.
I know a lot. I've used Photoshop quite a bit, and
I use Procreate.
My coloring is all done in Photoshop, and no, I never use dodge and burn.
Procreate is like Photoshop for dummies.
I use dodge some. I really never use burn, but I will only use dodge in an instance where I have a highlight, and I may do a highlight throughout the page, but I've got one thing that needs to be just a little step higher, and I will go through and maybe tap it a couple of times. But yeah, generally I work off of a palette of either a degree of white or that color that I modify and all that stuff. But I don't use that.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
David, you have given me an idea now for another podcast. So we're going to have you back and grab another colorist or two to have a whole podcast.
I think that would be a fascinating discussion. I would love to see that.
I'm going to be asking you to be a guest at some point.
Okay.
Probably in February.
Okay.
And thank you for being on the show tonight, because otherwise it was just going to be Rob and I, and we could only talk for so long.
Yeah, we would have. Yeah, we probably would have exhausted things after about 20, 30 minutes. And okay, what else do we talk about?
Well, we seem to have knocked the hour out pretty well.
Yeah,
we did. Well, having you here to bounce things off of definitely helped us. I was thrilled to see you drop in here, so we
and here we have a penciler and an inker and a colorist.
Yeah,
so we have a very well balanced show.
Yeah, we had the balance.
I just don't have a writer.
We needed a writer. Yeah.
I had this weird idea, going in, earlier today. I'm like, what if we did a sketch during the show, and we said, all right, well, we're going to just do a small timed sketch, and we have like an hour. And we say, all right, well, we're going to have, maybe Rob pencil out a sketch, and he's got like 20 minutes or so to sketch something out. And then it passes to Barbara. And when we're talking, Barbara inks it.
Inks
and then
it.
she's got a 20-minute and then passes to me, or if you have another colorist, and there's another 20 minutes, and let's see what you could do in a very simple sketch and all that stuff. But I thought it was just going to be kind of too much to do when you
that's
have
an
like, a
idea for another
dedicated-
show. That's
Yeah.
an idea for another show as well, because we could do something like that. Now, I work physically. I don't work when I pencil. I pencil on a piece of sheet of
Mhm.
paper. I mean, you see stuff behind me here, but I could scan it in and then send it to Barb to ink. So yeah, that could be an interesting show as well.
That was just something, I'm like, all right.
That's a great idea.
So, okay.
Well, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. This was actually a lot of fun. Got some secrets out there that we didn't know before. So, my purpose for this podcast was to let you know that you need to find that fire within yourself. Don't give up. Keep working at it, because if you have a true passion for art, that's the only way that you're going to break through. You've got to have that fire. You've got to have that drive, and you've got to be that obsessive. And you will succeed. It may take time. It may not happen overnight. There's an old adage: it only took him 20 years to be an overnight sensation.
Yes, sometimes
that's what happens. But if you have that drive and passion, it will happen. But you got to be stubborn. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Persistence pays.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you so much, David, for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks.
You definitely added. Yeah, it was definitely added. Yes. Value added.
Thanks for, bringing it and making it fun. So,
and as we always like to say at the end of our podcasts, make mine Silverline.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.